Hey everybody, my name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here, and this is our second week of our series, This Is Us. As we are getting into this series, we're taking a look at a number of different everybody's, and these are different everybody's that kind of define who we are as a church. In the second week, we're talking about how everybody invites here at RCC, and to talk about this a little bit more, I sat down with Bob Tramp to talk about how he and his family has invited people over the last couple of years. Take a look. Well, you mentioned that you've been coming for a little while. I'm curious, why did you even come to RCC in the first place anyways?
Oh yeah, it was through an invitation, so it's almost kind of cool. Like I'm talking on inviting people because that's what did it. Just that little putting a bug in your ear, and I'm like, man, so many of my friends and families I really look up to are coming here.
You invited a bunch of people to come here, though, as well. It hasn't just been you coming. It's been you saying, like, I want other people to be here. Why do you keep inviting people to be part of the church family here? Like, why do you do that?
I think once you get this place, which didn't take long for Val and I in your heart, you come here every Sunday and you hear the message, and we preach from the Bible, and you hear you got to accept Jesus as your Savior, and He died for us, and get Him in your heart. I love that part about your heart, because once you have that and you become baptized and you have this sense of you got to figure it out, and every week they reiterate that here at RCC. Just in my opinion, once you have the passion for it, if you have family or friends that you love and care about, it's almost like you have to ask them.
Most people don't think of church as an easy place to invite people to. Parties are really fun to invite people to. Why has church been easy for you?
Everybody here makes you feel so welcome, no matter where you're at in life, no matter what age you're at, that it is easy to us to invite people, because we know no matter what age you are, if you have small children, if super youth ministry, or if you have teens, or wherever you are, if you're single, wherever you are in life, I know you can get plugged in here. So
Thank you so much.
you bet.
Good evening. I'm actually Sam. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm actually here with you. Sorry, that's kind of weird for me. Like, I see myself on the video, and I'm like, wait, I look kind of funny up there, all that kind of stuff. So, sorry, bear with me with that. Welcome to Real Community Church. Like you said, I'm Sam, one of the pastors here. I'm excited for the night. I'm excited for Saturday night. It's beautiful out, so I'm going to try and get us through tonight so you can get out and enjoy it. But also, I'm really excited about what we're talking about tonight. Like we said just a second ago, we're in this series called This Is Us. We're talking about who we are as a church and who we want to become as a church and who we want to be. And as we've done this, we obviously stole that little title of This Is Us from a TV series. This Is Us. How many of you have watched This Is Us? A number of you have. Okay, very good. I have not. I'm not a fan of emotional roller coasters, but that's just me. But I've actually heard quite a bit about it, and it's kind of fun to talk about in terms of real life stuff, because they really definitely deal with some real life stuff. Really quickly about that video. Like it said, there's going to be more posts on Monday. You should watch it. Mike's was like 25 minutes, so I forgive you for not watching it. He just likes to talk a lot. I'm just kidding. I had a lot of questions for him, so that's not his fault. But this one's a little bit shorter, and it's great because nobody that we'll interview over the course of this series will know any of the questions ahead of time, and it's been so much fun to sit down and just ask kind of off-the-cuff questions, and there's so much more to that interview, and I encourage you to watch it online. It'll be on Facebook and YouTube on Monday, and you can check it out that way, but it was just really great to sit down and talk with Bob. He's just a fun person to talk to in general. But as we get into This Is Us series, and as we were planning for it and thinking it through and really kind of taking a look in the mirror at who we are as a church, and as we thought about these things, like we said last week, there's a whole bunch of everybody's that became clear. A whole bunch of everybody's. And there you see the graphic that we're going to be talking about throughout the series. There's Everybody Fits, that we talked about last week, Everybody Invites, that we talk about this week, and then we'll talk about the rest of them over the course of this next series. But as we look at that and we talk about it, what you need to know is we didn't just pull those out of thin air. We kind of got those as an assessment of our church, but it's also something that we find as we look in the Bible. And specifically, the very first church that we find in the book of Acts, we see this description of it. And you can read it, the whole amount of it is in Acts 2, 41 through 47. But each week we'll kind of focus on a different part of it, or we'll reference a different part of it and talk about how it fits within that first early church. And this week, it's in Acts 2, 47, the second half of it, it says this: "And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved." As we go back to that very first church, we get to see that it was the type of church where people felt like they could invite. They felt like they could invite people. They could invite their friends and their family. That's how people found out about it. It wasn't a first church that started with 3,000 people and then stayed 3,000 people. People kept coming, and the only way they're going to keep coming is if they've heard about it, and the only way they hear about it is people invite them into it. So people were inviting them into it. The churchy word for that is something called evangelism. But what's great about this is that's really just an overflow of what had been happening for the entire time Jesus was alive here on earth, and specifically for the 3 years of his ministry. For example, there's a couple of stories, and the first one I'll tell you is this. It's a story that I've always loved because I think it's just so pure and simple. Jesus, he was walking through a town, and he looks off to the side, and he sees this man sitting at a tax collector's booth, and his name is Levi. And tax collectors are not well-beloved people. They probably maybe aren't still well-beloved people because they're just giving them money. But in this day and age, it was especially so because the ruling people were the Romans, and so people didn't necessarily like giving their money to the Roman government. And so here he is sitting there, and he's tax collecting, and Jesus looks over at him. His name's Levi. He says, "Hey, Levi, come and follow me." And crazy thing happens. The guy stands up, leaves everything there, and follows Jesus. And so he begins to follow him, and that's just wild in and of itself, this tax collector giving up his job and his income and saying, "I'm going to leave all that behind. I'm going to follow Jesus." But then the next part is really great. Because just a short while later, he decides that, I've just met Jesus. I'm going to throw a party. Right? I'm going to throw a big old banquet. I'm going to get some food and some people all in one room, and I'm going to invite Jesus, and they're going to rub shoulders with each other. They're going to bump into each other and spend some time with each other. I'm going to get these people I care about to meet the person that has drastically changed my life. I want them to meet him because it'd be awesome because it's Jesus. And so Levi, he throws this party, invites all the crew, and gets a bunch of food together. They're having a great old time talking about whatever. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that party. But then, you got to know, very shortly after, this group of party killers. Have you ever met party killers before? Yes? Hopefully none of you are party killers. But the party killer, the Pharisees, they show up and they start to gripe about things. They get frustrated about things. It says this in Luke 5:30. "But the Pharisees and their teachers of religious law complained bitterly to Jesus' disciples." For sure, let's stop. Bitterly. What'd they care, right? Bitterly. They complained bitterly. And then they said, "Why do you eat and drink with such scum?" I just think that's crazy. They're calling them scum. That's a way to kill a party, right? Call somebody scum. And that's no fun. But what I love about it is Jesus hears this, and he says this. It's Luke 5:31 through 32. Jesus answered them, "Healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners and need to repent." I love that story. It's one of those most pure stories. And Jesus' comments are like mic drop comments. So how can you come back from that? So sit on that one for a minute as I tell you a second story. There's this other time. Jesus and his disciples, they come up to this Samaritan town, and so they stop on the outskirts at a well. Jesus sits down, resting from the long journey. The disciples head into town to grab some supplies. And while they're gone, this woman, middle of the day, comes out to fetch some water. Jesus, sitting there, asks the woman for a drink of water. Now, this is a Samaritan woman who is there in the middle of the day. Most of the time when you're going to get water, you go in the morning or at night because it's cooler, and you go with a group of people. She was alone. There might be a few reasons for that. And it kind of comes out over the course of their discussion. But as they're talking, she's like, "Why would you ask me for a drink of water? I'm a Samaritan. Jews don't associate with Samaritans." Jesus, after a little bit of talking, gets back to saying, well, if you knew who I was, you wouldn't worry about me asking you for water. You'd be asking me for water because the kind of water I provide, you're just never going to need anymore. It becomes this bubbling spring that comes out of you. You don't need any more water. And they continue to talk and go back and forth, and she's probably like, what in the world? Who is this guy? What's this all about? They talk about worship and the right way to worship, and they talk about the Messiah that's supposed to be coming and all this stuff. And at the end, as the disciples are coming up, Jesus says to this woman, hey, I am the Messiah. And she's, I think, having her mind blown. And the disciples come and they meet them there, and the woman, seeing the disciples, I think decides, okay, it's time to bail here. She puts her jar beside the well, and this is what it says happens next. It's in John 4:28 through 30. It says, the woman left her water jar beside the well and ran back to the village, telling everyone, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? So the people came, streaming from the village to see him. Two stories, very different circumstances, and yet did you see the similarity? In both cases, the result was exactly the same. You meet Jesus, and you cannot help but invite your friends and the people you know to do the same. You can't help it. You just can't help it. You want them to know Jesus. It doesn't matter who they are. I mean, if you think about it, like they're the scum of the earth according to the Pharisees, yet Levi invites them. Or they're all the people that had probably been looking down on this woman because she was thought to have been not necessarily the most well-to-do or moral person in the group. And yet she still invites everybody. She invites everybody. It doesn't matter who they are or what they've done. You just can't help but share the news. It's the natural reaction. If you find a good restaurant with the best pizza, you don't keep that information to yourself. You share it. It's a good thing. How much more so with Jesus? How could you not, right? How could you not? Here's this guy who sees down to the core of who we are as people and who, in spite of knowing just exactly who we are and all the stuff inside of us, still loves us, cares for us, and respects us all the same. And pays a price for us. That's why part of what makes this church the us that we are and what will continue to make us the kind of church that God wants us to be is everybody invites somebody. It's just what we do. I mean, why wouldn't you? Once you know Jesus, how could you not? How could you not invite someone to know Jesus? And here's the important part about it. There is no special way. There is no canned invitation that you have to memorize. You can just be yourself. You can just do it your own way. The woman at the well, she called out to everyone in town and sent them out to see Jesus at the well. Levi, he threw a party and invited a bunch of people to see Jesus and thought, hey, all they have to do is rub shoulders with him. They'll see for themselves. For every person, there's a unique way to do it. You can do it how you're wired to do it. What matters is that we do it. It's actually what Jesus teaches us to do. In Matthew, he meets his first disciples and tells them kind of what he's going to be doing with them. And he says this, it says this in Matthew 4. One day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people. And they left their nets at once and followed him. So Jesus says, as disciples, if we're a disciple of him, if we're a follower of him, he says we're to fish. Not for fish, we're to fish for people. Now, I'm no fisherman, okay? Like, I cannot catch a fish. I have two sons who are both 6 and 4 and better fishermen than myself. They have caught more fish between the two of them than I have ever. So that's kudos to them. But I've now worked with Pastor Mike long enough, 8 years now, and I've picked up a thing or two because he does fish a lot. Most of all, though, in our conversations about it, I'll share like running stuff, he'll share fishing stuff, and the thing that I've kind of caught on to more than anything is this. You can use the best fishing lure, the best bait, whatever, but if the fish aren't hungry, if the fish aren't wanting something to eat, if they don't want to bite, you're not going to catch them. you're not going to catch them. You have to go fishing a little. You have to find the right spot and the right circumstances. Some people are ready to think about faith. Some aren't. Some aren't there yet. Some will bite, some won't. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It can be as simple as, you know what, you're having a conversation, right? You're picking the kids up from school, or you're out on a Friday night and you're chatting with somebody, and you can simply say, like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And they say they watched the Packer game. And they said, hey, what did you do this weekend? And you said, hey, I went to church and then I watched the Packer game. And if they hear the church part and like, oh, where'd you go to church? There you go. You can chat about it. If they're not interested, they're not interested yet. They don't have to be. Or you can say, hey, I went to this thing on Tuesday night called Midweek or whatever. We talked about that last week. And they'd be like, oh, what is that all about? If they're interested, they'll want to talk about it. If they're not, you don't need to push. It's an opportunity for you to just talk about it in the most normal way possible. It doesn't have to be weird. It can just be an open door to a conversation. If they're interested in faith stuff, they'll bite. They'll ask about it. Maybe there'll be a chance to say, hey, you should come check it out. It won't stink, promise. Maybe it does tonight. I'm sorry. I hope it doesn't. Doesn't have to be a pushy thing. It's just a normal thing, because who wouldn't want to invite somebody, right? And you can do this wherever, at work, picking up the kids, hanging out on a Friday night. You are giving them a chance to experience something amazing. Why wouldn't you want to invite? The point is this. You can just be yourself. You can throw maybe a little bait out there and see if they want to talk about it. If they don't worry about it. Just keep being yourself. If they're interested, they'll follow up. You don't have to, bring the heat, like the big guns. You have to go to church or else. You do not need to do that. Just be yourself. Now, there are some ways to invite, right? There are some different ways that make it maybe a bit more easy or maybe a bit more specific. And it starts probably off with the one that's maybe the most obvious, and that's this. It's to invite them to church. So you have a friend, and they've never come to church before, and it'd be a really easy way to like, hey, check it out. If you don't like it, no pressure, but come check it out. And let's be really honest here about this, and this is a really important one. Either RCC is a place you feel good about inviting people to, or if it's not, you should probably go and find a different church. Now, I know that's harsh. I know that's very blatant and blunt. But you might want to find a different church. Find a church where you are actually excited to invite people to. Because if your faith isn't alive like that, then it's not worth it, right? Find a place you're excited to invite people to. And we hope it's here. We hope that this is the place where you are. But if you do invite them to church here, what we want you to know is that you can know that those people will be well respected, that they'll be well taken care of, that they won't have any expectations on them. They won't have to do anything weird. Won't be put on the spot. It'll be a safe place for them to experience what it's like to have a group of people who care about each other and want to follow Jesus together, worshiping together, and learning something about following Jesus. It'll be a safe place to do those things. Whenever someone walks through those doors back there, we want them to be treated like their family, right? Like you have guests in your home, you treat them like like their family. And that's the goal of our church staff. Like as we talk about staff stuff, that's what you want to make sure that you do. But in addition, that's the goal of our whole church family. Every single person here has that goal to make sure people feel welcomed. Now that's the first way. It's kind of the most obvious way of invitations, but there are a bunch of other ways also that you can be an inviter when it comes to your faith. The second one is this: invite people into your life. Invite people into your life. It says this in Colossians 4:5-6. It says, live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. Our lives. Like Tuesday when you're grocery shopping, or Thursday when you're mowing the lawn and people walk by in the neighborhood and want to chat. Our lives, whether you're shooting hoops with someone or you're grilling out or grabbing pizza or coffee or whatever, your lives are an invitation. You don't need to be laser focused on inviting somewhere, just the natural result of being a good friend. Invite people to spend time together. The important thing is to be a friend like Jesus would be and help people feel less on the outside, because the honest truth is most people feel like they're on the outside. It's just kind of who we are. Like, there's a natural inclination to feel like there's an in-group and there's an out-group. And it stinks. So being a friend can be powerful. But it's a real thing. They actually talk about it in the This Is Us show. Take a look. There it is.
You know, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Star Wars. I loved that it was this huge story, right, where a bunch of people come together to fight these giant wars. But when you break it down, it's really just about a few people on the inside who know what's up. Luke, Vader, Leia, Obi-Wan. They were on the inside. And they're having lightsaber battles on bridges, and they're talking about big stuff. And everybody else is pretty much Chewbacca.
So in this story, the three of us are Chewbacca.
If the Chewie fits, Beth.
If the Chewie fits. I like that line. But how often is that true, right? Even in the church. Even in normal church life, how often does it feel like there's some people that are doing the stuff and then feel a little bit like they're on the outside? I don't think it has to be true here. I don't think a person that started coming today or a person who's been here for 10 years or whatever has to feel like they're on the outside. Anybody here can be doing big stuff for God. And if you're curious about that and you want to talk about it, let's talk. Let's have some fun. You do not have to earn your credibility or get on the inside here to start following Jesus and doing things that are impactful here in this community. We can start today. Chat with me afterwards. That's what's awesome about this place. I love that. But it also illuminates something that maybe is a little bit further and deeper than that. Maybe you're here and you feel like this is the first time coming to church in a long time. Maybe you see somebody later this week who literally has not been or never been or really feels like they're on the outside, because for a lot of people it's even worse. It's not just that they're Chewbacca, it's more than that, which I talk about in the second part. Take a look.
I've been on the outside of this family since I entered it. I'm not even Chewbacca. I'm one of the fighter pilots who doesn't even have a name.
That's not true, Miguel.
It is. And I'm okay with that.
And I'm okay with that. It's often how people on the outside feel. It's worse, right? Not only do they feel like they're on the outside, but they're okay with it. They're okay with it. It's just kind of how it is. It's our role to help them know they matter. They matter. They belong, says God. We can do this simply by being the kind of friend they're not used to having. The kind of friend who's filled with grace. The kind of friend who's filled with forgiveness. The kind of friend who really actually cares. So that's the second way, inviting people into your life. The third way is this: invite to hear your story. In 2 Corinthians 5:18, it says this: "And all of this is a gift from God, who brought us back to himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling people to him." The task of reconciling people to him. That sounds like a really big task, doesn't it? Like a really hard task. The reality, though, is it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this big overarching thing. The best way to help people know who they can be before God is to tell your own story. It's to tell your own story. It gives them a picture of what it looks like in real life, because sometimes it's just so hard to conceptualize. So if you can say, I believe in Jesus and I've started following him, and look, these are the ways that my life has changed because of it, suddenly they can see, oh, that's what reconciling means. Oh, that's what having faith in Jesus looks like. Oh, I get it. I can kind of see how my life would follow those lines. Some people talk about how faith is personal, right? It's super personal to them, and it is. I get it. It totally is. It's something sacred between you and God, but it's also something that should be shared. Just because it's sacred doesn't mean you have to keep it to yourself. In fact, it's actually your responsibility to share it. In 1 Peter 3:15, it says, "Instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it." We should have a reason. We should have a reason. We should know why we believe what we believe. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated than your own story. You already know. He's changed your life. Let's start there. He's changed how you make decisions. He's changed how you put your value in things. Let's start there. We talk about faith stories a lot here. And it's basically just talking about your life and how Jesus has been a part of it and changed it and shaped it. And these faith stories basically have four parts. There's the before you knew who Jesus was and started to follow him. There's the how you realized you actually should. Like what was going on in your life? What brought you to that place where like, oh, I need something. Something's got to shift here. Something's got to change, or I need to have this thing that's guiding my life. So you realize it, and then what happened when you made that decision and how you committed? What did that look like? That's part 3. And the last part is how life is different since. And what I want to say really quickly about that last one is it's never a rosy glow thing, okay? It doesn't have to be this perfect, oh, my life is 1,000,000,000% blissful, because it's not, right? There are hard times. It's difficult. Except there's a place where you're looking to. There's this guide. There's this forgiveness. There's this weight lifted off your shoulders that you don't have to carry anymore. And even though life is difficult, even though life is hard sometimes, you still would not trade it for anything because there's joy in it, and there's purpose in it, and there's life in it. So how is it different than what it was before? Not rosy glowed, honest and real. Your own personal story is important, and it's unique, and a nice thing, if you don't like debating, it can't be debated. It's yours. That's 3. Number 4 is this: invite to faith. That's an intimidating one sometimes, isn't it? Like this idea of actually saying, do you want to believe, and here's how you believe, and this is what it means. Maybe is a little intimidating. You don't know if you could actually articulate it the right way. But if you're like me, and you believe this faith in Jesus thing actually has the best kind of life-altering effects, then you got to know it's worth it, right? It's got to be worth it. You'll send a sick friend to the best doctor you can find, so don't be afraid to talk to a friend about Jesus. We're actually, we just finished a series on Romans this summer, and somebody who really enjoyed it came up to us and said, hey, I know you're doing some stuff coming up with this new series. What if we offered a chance to look at what this looks like to believe and why you would believe and how to explain and understand it through Romans? It's kind of a common thing if you've been around church. Romans is a really great way of looking at this faith. And she said, what if we did a class on it? So we're going to. So if you want to talk about sharing your faith, if that's something interesting to you and you just want to know how to do it and what that looks like, we're going to have a class on October 7th at 12:30 in the Lighthouse right over here, just next door. So if you want that, you can mark your calendar. It'll be in the program the next couple weeks, but it'll be October 7th after the 3rd service on Sunday. And it'll be a chance to walk through, hey, what does Romans say about sharing your faith? What does that look like? How can I know what that is? And it'd be an awesome chance for you to just know it then. And then you wouldn't have to be afraid if you ever came upon that kind of a situation. And it could be great. In John 20:21, it says this. Jesus said, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. What are you being sent to? Paul says this in Acts 20:24, because he was obviously sent. But my life is worth nothing to me unless I use it for finishing the work assigned me by the Lord Jesus, the work of telling others the good news about the wonderful grace of God. For Paul, that's what he was sent to. There's this sense of obligation, like, how can I not? How can I not? Once you've heard good news, it's human nature just to share it, isn't it? I mean, free ice cream, I'm going to tell everybody. It sounds awesome. And so much better than free ice cream. You don't have to force it. You can just be ready for it. So what are you sharing? When we look at this, we're talking about being sent to, and we're sent to share this good news. But what is this good news? And I know we maybe talk about it on and off, but sometimes it's just good to say it out loud again. So here it is, right? If we're talking about the good news, what is it? This is it. It's this. It's that in spite of us losing our way, in spite of us doing things that mess up our relationship with God, or that puts barriers between us and God, and barriers between us and each other, the sin stuff that we can attribute to every ugly relationship in the history of the world, despite that, or in spite of that, God still sent his son Jesus to us in human form to repair that relationship, to put it back together, to make us right with God again, to offer us forgiveness, debt payment, and in doing so, also show us exactly how we're to do it with each other. So he did this with us and God, and now he says, okay, that's how we did it. Now let's do that with each other. Let's forgive each other. Let's offer each other grace. In this relationship, it not only makes us right with God, that right standing and different way of living by following Jesus' Holy Spirit, it changes our lives now for the better. Right now, day in and day out, for the more meaningful and the more purposeful. And it also ensures us a good and right eternity in God's kingdom where death finally doesn't rule anymore, where that fear of death is gone because Jesus beat it. That's what we're inviting people to. This free relationship with Jesus that makes us right with God and shows us how to be right with each other and offers eternity with God. There's nothing better. There's nothing more important, and we're powerless to do that and share that on our own. I know we just talked about all these different ways that we can invite, but here's the deal. We're not good enough to totally do it by ourselves. We need God's help. Like, none of this is going to happen well if we're trying to muscle through it ourselves. We need God to lead the way. We need him to do the heavy lifting for us. So the final thing, the last bit here of how to invite is this. Number 5 is pray. If you're going to give an invitation in some form to somebody, pray first. Say, God, please help this to go well and help me to not say something too weird that weirds them out. I don't know, maybe that's me. I don't know if it's you or not. Pray first before you have that invitation. Pray for a friend's salvation. Maybe there's somebody that you just care about so much, and it's been so hard to see them go through what they're going through, and you know that there's another way. Pray for them. Don't just talk about how, man, so-and-so's messing up. I wish they'd come. I wish they'd do this. I wish they'd follow Jesus. Man, they'd really get it right. That's gossip. Don't do that. Pray. Pray for them. Want good for them. Pray for their salvation. Pray for an opportunity. Hey, I really want this person to be part of this. God, help me to have the opportunity to do that. Make the conversation just flow. Help it happen. And I'll trust you. I'll trust you to do it. You don't need to get all weird about it. You don't need to use churchy lingo. Just invite and ask God to do the work of providing opportunities and to make people open to it. They have soft hearts, right? Like, not just hard and callous toward it. They'd actually be open to it. That's how we're going to end. And end by just saying a prayer and asking God for opportunities. And then also, I know how many times there's those people in our lives that we care so deeply about it and we wish that they'd be open to it. So I'm going to also pray not only for opportunities, but for chances for those people to have soft hearts, that they would be open to it. And if you want that for yourself or you want that for a particular person, would you pray with me as we close? Dear God, thank you so very much that you love us and that very first invitation itself comes from you, that you invite us to be part of your family through Jesus. So thank you for that. But God, as we think about those people in our lives that we care about, we ask that you just give us opportunities. Opportunities to invite them in one of the many different ways that we talked about inviting. Help us just know how to do that and when to do that. And when the chances come, because as we're praying for it, we know that you will provide those. Help us to not chicken out. Help us to actually say those words and ask for an invitation. But then in addition to that, God, for those of us here tonight, there are those people that we just are heavy about. We care about them so much, and we know that you offer a better way. God, we ask that they would be open, that they would be soft to it, that as we give those invitations, that they'd be excited about it even, that they'd see hope where your hope is. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.